On this episode of the After the Timeout podcast, in partnership with the IBCA, we sit down with Doshia Woods, head women's basketball coach at Denver University. We talk to Coach Woods about providing your players with life basketball balance, coaching with a positive mindset, and a breakdown of her team's offensive efficiency. As always, thank you for listening to the After the Timeout podcast.
All right, Coach. So we start everything with every episode with what we call the opening tip. We like to just let our listeners know about our guests. Maybe give us a little preview of Denver basketball, how you guys are doing preseason, and then kind of, your journey and what it took to get to where you were and the path you took.
Perfect. Well, I will say, we just finished our third week of preseason. We're on the quarter system here at DU, so we actually didn't start school until this past Monday, September 11th. But we split our 8 weeks. So we did like 6 early in like June, July. Our players got about 5-week break, and then we came back and really have loved it. Obviously, the altitude can impact, and it's really given us a chance to get in shape. We have 9 returners, so I really want to give our freshmen a shout out because I've noticed that things are moving a lot faster. We don't necessarily stop and teach each drill, especially in 8 hours of time. But I really like where we are. I really like the way that this group works and they compete in battle. This would be year 4 for me. So, even as a coaching staff, have the same staff returning, we've been able to offer a lot of clarity, both sides of the ball. So it's been, I wouldn't say relaxed, but nice kind of play with a few different areas because they know our personality, things like that. As far as my coaching journey, I said it's my 4th year here. It'll be my 23rd year overall. And I was just telling somebody this in an elevator. They were lost in campus. And I said, I'll take you. So I'm trying to talk. And I still get, what position do you play? Are you a student? And I'm like, thank you. But actually, so I still appreciate and embrace those compliments. But yes, I'm a veteran now, and I just have learned to embrace it at 23 years in the profession, 4 years here as a head coach. So I've had quite a few different stops. I don't know if you want me to go through all those stops. I definitely can.
Sure. Well, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, well, my first year coaching, I like to say, was my senior year at Western Illinois. I was the only senior with 8 freshmen. And it was just really my first kind of chance to be that go-between coach and the players. Freshmen, they're always just trying to keep their head above water when they're just entering college anyway. So that was really, I joke, my first year. But Coach Crane, who is my head coach at the time, really just asked me to stay on to be a graduate assistant. Assistant took a job like late September. And I eventually just got moved up into that role as an assistant coach. So it really was probably a big adjustment, but the best adjustment in a sense of coaching my teammates. She really gave me a chance to learn the coaching side of things. Obviously, already knew her style. And then could have honestly done that forever. Coach and I had a great relationship, but wanted to expand. I've never wavered from wanting to be a head coach at this level. It was always a goal of mine. So from there, I went to New Mexico State for a year, Oregon State for 3 years, University of Missouri for 2 years, and then spent a bulk of my time prior to getting this position at Tulane University for 10 years. And I moved around quite a bit. I'm from Kansas originally, but I moved around, gave me a chance to work for a lot of different types of people, to see a lot of different types of basketball, a lot of ways that the games could play. And that whole time gave me a chance to just build my own portfolio, my own thoughts, and what I want to do when I had the opportunity. Like, that's a long answer.
Not at all.
We always think it's cool to hear the path because it, then you kind of see the connections of style and mentors and things like that. It's always really cool.
So just to kind of build off of that, actually you led in perfectly. So you kind of had said, you're from Kansas, you went to school in Western Illinois, you were in the New Orleans area for a long time at Tulane, and now you're at Denver. Those are 4 completely different places. So
Understatement.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so something we haven't really hit on with a lot of our guests is, having lived in so many different varied places, you know, how does that work with your personal life? How does that work with being, you know, around family where you grew up, or friends, or, you know, kind of maybe take our listeners into that journey a little bit as the personal side of being a head coach and being an assistant?
You know, I would say I'm very fortunate. I started my career when I did. You know, there wasn't that social media that you have now. I think cell phones had just become a thing then, and we were, you know, well versed kind of in the internet. And so for me, probably the New Mexico State and Oregon State, that was my first time really out of the time zone. And I didn't realize how different that was, right? You're winning these big games, and you have all this excitement, and there's nobody to call because it's too late, you know, or you're getting up super early. But you know, I think learning to navigate that earlier in my career, I've always enjoyed like mentoring our players and really just serving them and pouring into them. So each step, that's what really kept me going. I know, you know, if we're being honest, the year I spent at New Mexico State, I honestly was in a dark spot. So I think I spent more time at church than I did at the office. You know, it was trying to figure myself out, trying to figure my sexuality out, a lot of those things. And I remember whatever the church had going on, I did. And I'm just, that's my personality naturally, is I will find somebody to talk to. I'll find kind of my outlet. And at that point in my life, like I said, it was church. Like, you know, I was the first one to volunteer. Anything with youth group, Pastor Carey and Pastor Paul, shout out to them, because you know, that was fun. And then I think once I got to Oregon State, I started to realize that I could maybe semi try to have a balance. But it definitely takes a toll. You know, I think it's easier now with social media. You obviously can set up FaceTime, you can set up Zooms and stay connected that way. But I really have been just immersed in the players that I've coached, and some of those relationships of people that I've worked with.
Yeah, now that the Zoom hangover is worn off, right? after we all use Zoom for so long, and we're stuck in the house.
Yeah. And then when you say like all the different types of plays, you know, when I left Topeka, East Topeka, I always like to specify it's a very just different side of town. I played 2 years at a junior college in Kansas, in Great Bend, Kansas. And that was almost like my first, it was only a few hours away, but it was like culture shock, because, you know, East Topeka, I grew up, you know, low income. It was pretty diverse on that side of town. It was just, I didn't really leave that side of town, if you will. We all were, not everybody, but a lot of us were just, you know, it was low income, right? And you're just trying to make it day to day. And so to go to Great Bend, I remember calling my mom. I was like, there's cows across the street from the school. I don't even know how to like it, because it was so, that was the Kansas, because that wasn't the Kansas that I grew up in. Topeka's like, you know, city, all of these things. And so that was really my first intro to kind of being away from home. But I'm one that I like new things. I like meeting new people, and living in a lot of different places, learning a lot of different cultures gave me a chance to do that. Even growing up, like I said, we had our hard times. I never thought that was going to be my life. And basketball provided a chance to travel, you know, the states in ways I had never envisioned. I never honestly thought I'd leave the East Side, speaking honest with you, and here I am in, like, you know, my sixth state since graduating.
I love the specificity of East Topeka, from East Topeka, not just Topeka, from East Topeka. I love it. Two, I totally can connect with you. I went to Illinois College in Springfield here, and played football. First time our quarterback's like, "Hey, you want to come to my farm with me?" I'm like, "Okay." I'm from the Chicago suburbs. I've never been to a farm. I'm like, there's cows, there's pig, all kinds of stuff. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
So we've been talking to a lot of our guests about this lately. All right, so you guys are in the Summit League, right? But I guess maybe do you have to preface it for now, right? Who knows anymore, right? With all this moving and going on. But how have you guys been kind of you know, I guess maybe looking ahead and managing that kind of stuff, and your travel, and now, you know, I'm sure with people moving different conferences, maybe affects your non-con schedules, and, you know, all the factors that go into it, but also keeping your players in mind. They're still student athletes, and they have families, and so kind of avoiding all that to where you don't get burnout either with all the things that are changing throughout the college basketball in general.
That's a good question. I think, with the Summit League and just the conference realignment in general, first I'll say this. I like to say, I mind the business that pays me. And so right now that's University of Denver, and specifically, obviously, women's basketball. We don't have football here at DU. So I feel, our athletic director, Josh Burlow, actually put together a committee to kind of obviously want to keep abreast, and we want to be informed about what's going on. But I think for us, it's kind of like a wait and see when a lot of these things are happening. It's not like we're high on anyone's list because we don't have football. A lot of this is generated around football. As far as our team, we really have a team from all over. We have one player from Wyoming who's kind of obviously in this area. Other than that, you get Arkansas, Alabama, California, Wisconsin, Washington, a lot of different states, Kansas, Texas. So a lot of our players are already coming to a place where there's travel involved. We have a few schools here in our region, but we pretty much fly everywhere. We're fortunate to be supported that way. And I think for us, not much changes in the sense of we want to continue to build our program. We want to continue to elevate. As the conference realignment happens, it will be impactful. Other schools in the Summer League have football, and as things start to shake down. But our focus right now is building our program and being the best that we can be. Whoever we have to compete against, I'm confident we'll have the resources to do so.
So just something that popped in my head here as a follow-up, like, when you're kind of recruiting and things like that, have you even noticed, like, looking at the schedule, like, hey, maybe we're gonna play over in Arkansas or California, or is that something that's kind of come up, or something maybe you just take into account when you're scheduling games of trying to at least maybe get like Arkansas to Denver's a long way, right?
Yes.
It's again completely different time zone. Is that something you kind of, when you're looking at stuff, try to incorporate to maybe get a chance at some point to help some of your players' families see their games and things like that?
Oh, absolutely. We were looking at Coach Dubs, Coach Lawrence does our scheduling, and we were looking to complete the schedule. And, our final kind of two additions, I tell you, we are going to Texas State this year and to North Alabama, in part because of the makeup of our team. And we knew it would be an opportunity to kind of get those kids home. If it works and it makes sense, absolutely. We're going to California for our kid that's from Southern Cal. So we try to factor in, especially, again, as you guys will learn, I prefer the high school route. Not that we don't have kids out of the portal, but we recruit in a way that I expect our kids to be here for 4 years. So at least one time in that, we'll try to get them close to home so their family can see them in some capacity. But it is something that we're definitely mindful of in that scheduling process.
And you can't beat Southern California in the middle of the winter, right? I mean, it's a little
Exactly.
nice little break.
Yes. And the benefit of the quarter system, we're actually done with finals before Thanksgiving. So we truly have the entire month of December just to focus on basketball. And that's a fun time. And I'm one of those people, we're not going to go to California and just play basketball. We will, trust me, we'll try to find our way to the beach or find our way for something, part of making memories. As I tell the team, we play, ideally if you go to a national championship game, you're maybe playing 40 games a year. Well, what are we doing the rest of that time? Now, we have to be able to make memories and do things. So basketball is important, but it's not everything. And so if there's time, and usually December is that time for us to kind of make a team memory. We've done, we went to Purdue a couple of years ago. We're in the candy cane factory. That was really popular there. We went to California another time. We're at the beach. So we'll definitely find some type of team activity to do and not just play basketball.
So going a little bit into your time as an assistant, we don't talk very often to people that are an assistant at somewhere for an extended period of time, like you were at Tulane. We thought that was, a very unique thing about your journey. So kind of in those 10 years, what were some of the things that you really took away with it, maybe that helped you become a head coach, and maybe a piece of advice you have for young coaches that want to be a head coach, as you said you did, but take the time to be somewhere and learn and really try to prepare themselves.
I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of times, especially early in my career, prior to getting into Tulane, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a head coach by I'm 30, right? That was especially when I started coaching at 23, I said, oh, by the time I'm 30, and I kind of had this like false path laid out for myself. Had a chance to work at 2 Power 5 schools prior to getting into Tulane. And that's kind of where my mind was. It's like, oh, I have to get there. Well, okay, I got there, right? Both one was a rebuild and the other was towards the end of her time there. And I remember getting into Tulane. First of all, I learned not to pigeonhole yourself. Complete transparency. Coach Stockton is starting year 30 at Tulane University. And I remember when I saw there was a position open, I looked at it, and back then it's very different now, but back then I remember being told, okay, if they have one, Black person on the staff, then they can't have two. Literally, it's how I was introduced to the profession. So you have like your one, that's how the dynamics of staff work. So I remember looking, and it came across my mind as a second, right? And I was like, oh, she already has a Black person on staff, so I'm not going to apply. And this was also my other lesson is people are always watching you. She had a position open and we were let go. We knew we weren't going to be retained at Missouri in like March, but we got paid through June. So it gave me a chance to kind of take my time and find a right fit. Well, because again, I'm assuming that she already has what she needs. And basically a mutual friend, she needed a recruiting coordinator. And so someone called and was like, hey, Lisa Stockton's looking at Tulane. And I literally said, oh, she already has some. I was like, no, she's looking for a recruiting coordinator. You do XYZ. Race never came up here. That was me putting that out there, right? So long story short, ended up interviewing, really hit it off. And Lisa and I actually had met prior to my time at Oregon State. And the coach I was working for at the time had a suite at the Final Four. And Lisa talks about just how I was like basically serving everybody. Like I was there, obviously, but making sure, hey, do you need this? Do you need that in a suite? And was super personal. Well, she remembered that small exchange, literally the only time we met, and that turned into a 10-year stint with her. And staying there with her so long, what I really admired about Lisa is the balance that she provided. Obviously has been super successful there, has been through, a few different, changes, whether you want to say Katrina or just obviously movement conferences, things like that. And for her consistency of just to focus on her program. I remember at one time there was, we'd gotten a new men's coach, and, it was clear like things were like, okay, how come all of a sudden they have XYZ? And she'd always say, do we have what we need to be successful? And basically we need to focus on that. And I really say that to myself every day here now, because you get distracted by what this person has and what they're doing. And she really taught me a lot about how she just ran her program, this quiet confidence. She's not she's not a Kim Mulkey type by any means. That's not her personality. But she actually last season became the winningest head coach in the state of Louisiana. But I think what, as an assistant for her for so long, the benefit of staying with someone so long, obviously you get to know each other, but then you build up a relationship where you can start to ask for more, right? I went in as a recruiting coordinator, but I also had a chance to be in charge of compliance, be the liaison for compliance, be the liaison for sports information, for academics, to be on different committees across campus, because a lot of that started to take care of itself. And because she allowed me to do a lot of those things, I actually earned my master's from Tulane. I graduated in 2020 in COVID because she gave me a chance to get across campus and build some other relationships. And I really appreciate the balance that she allowed us to have. We always work hard, but it was like, you can play hard too. Because New Orleans is impossible to be there and not, if you're gonna be there and not enjoy the city, that's on you. That's on you. And she made sure that we had a chance to do that. So, I can't give her enough credit for how she allowed me to grow as a coach and as a person. And I really see a lot of what she taught me show up here at Denver. But I think the other advice I would give to assistants that want to be a head coach, and I had to learn, is you have to learn how to invest in yourself. We give our players, so much advice if they come in and they want more playing time or they're struggling with this. And I remember, telling certain players, hey, if you want this, like, what are you doing to separate yourself? Here's what the stats look like. Here's what we're seeing. And the same, I interviewed for a few head coaching jobs prior to getting this one. And I thought, to see someone else get the job that I thought I was more qualified for. And then I just really started to invest in how can I continue to separate myself. That was part of the reason to get my master's at 40, because I never finished it at Western. I just went straight into coaching. But that was a reason. And I really started to shift my focus of how can I continue to separate myself. And again, being with someone long enough gave me the opportunity to do that.
So we wanted to talk about your time with the Power of Positive Summit with Jon Gordon. Awesome stuff. He brings in a lot of people from various backgrounds, but having that experience, obviously you're chosen for a reason, but within your team, right? How do you go about balancing that positive atmosphere, but still having those high standards and competing at a high level? I think, like, even coaching D3, it's a big jump from high school to the college level of sometimes not realizing, like, ultimately, hey, what happens on the court is our full-time job, right? Like, there's an effect, but you still have to create that positive atmosphere and teach your kids about not only basketball but life, and having those standards of your team. So kind of how do you find that balance, and what are some things you guys do to I guess work on that and practice that during your seasons and during your workouts and all that?
Good. I am just naturally a positive person, and I'm sure it probably just wears on people, because I think sometimes when people say, oh, you're positive, as if I'm competitive as well, as if I don't want to win like the next person. I'm just not the big yeller, right? And no one on our staff really is. We're not that one. We're not the staff who are going to come in and it's going to be intense. Last time, film crew come for something else, doing compliment they gave me at the end was that they can see just the standard and expectation, right? You feel it, and you can kind of see it. They can see the culture. I didn't have to identify it for them. They could feel it. And I say, first of all, our practices are always open. I'm one that I really don't have anything high. What you see is what you're going to get. I'm not going to change just because, our AD walks in, or because your parents are here. We had some parents at practice, and I'm like literally going to meet me every day. But for starters, just in terms of like positive, our core values is progress, but it's an acronym, and each letter means something different. But at the end of every practice, we pretty much will huddle up. We'll circle up at half court and say, how do we make progress today? One of the R's is resilient. Who was resilient today? Gratitude is the G. O is ownership. And we'll kind of go through those. And that's a chance for the players to kind of give another player a shout out, coaches a shout out, or just in general. And regardless of practice, the greatest practice one day last week, and it's every single practice. It's not contingent on, we have to have a good practice to do that. When people say, oh, when the day, 24 hours is a long time if you're struggling with something, right? 24 hours, you think how I have to get through this whole 24 hours. I'm really one that operate best moment to moment. So if we've had a bad practice, we'll usually end with the progress circle, think on something positive when our players go to weights. And then I'll say, crush weights. Go crush weights. Just because practice wasn't great doesn't mean you can't be great for Coach D in the weight room. If the team will probably tell you that mom look is irritating or frustrating for me, I'm just going to look, and then, sometimes that isn't the best because then I have to decipher it. But for me, the look is better because if I say something, then I might say something I regret, which is why I often have sanitizer on the sideline, which is a fun fact. The sanitizer is both because of COVID, but I kept it since COVID because it gives me a chance to really like, let me just think about what I want to say. Do I want it to come out this way? Matter of fact, just get a water, just get a water break because I need a moment.
So we call this halftime adjustment. It's kind of the halfway point before we transition into offense. But you talked about that progress. So when you were talking about this, I kind of we kind of just kind of see where it goes for our halftime adjustments. But how do you measure that progress off the court? And then, heading to our offensive segment here, like the progress on the court too, right? Because there has to be, everybody can say, oh, we're making progress, but at the same time, you have to have some way to measure it and show that we're making that progress to help your coaching staff, your players, yourself know that, hey, we're doing the right thing, or maybe we need to change something a little bit. So how do you measure it?
Progress for me, it really became a way, again, getting in a position here in the pandemic. Obviously, we're all competitive, right? We're in sports, everybody wants to win and be in a position to do so. And we didn't win, to be honest with you. Coaching in general is one of the few sports that your successes and failures are on display for everybody, right? As soon as the game ends, everybody knows. And then if that's how you define success, right? Success is, did you win or lose for most people? And I really had to find a way to, how are we really making progress? So off the court, we developed a Life 4.0 program. And Life 4.0, again, came a chance. I'm a huge mental health advocate. And I wanted our players to, I didn't want it to be a stigma with our program. It's not a stigma. We talk about it. We talk openly about it. I post openly about it. And sometimes in hopes that, if one of them really are struggling, that they know that they can either come talk to me or go see somebody else, because there's a ton of support. And then obviously also a chance to talk about social justice. Because of our Life 4.0 program, it really is evolved into either financial planning or media training, a lot of different topics. It's called that for a reason. So anything life-wise. And one way that I measure just our progress with that is just our ability to get around campus and get into the community of Denver, where the joke on campus, if there's something going on, women's basketball will most likely show up, either myself or my staff or team, and we will be engaged, we'll be represented. And again, being the only Black head coach here on campus is one that I take pride in, but I also make sure that our team knows we're kind of like split down the middle. So whether there's activities across campus and you name it, we're not practicing on Monday, September 25th, right? We have a kid on our team from Israel. She's Jewish, and it's Yom Kippur. And I said, are you going to celebrate? Are you going to practice? She was like, absolutely. I said, okay, we'll take that day off. And it's just one that it wasn't a big deal to me. Okay, we'll just practice Tuesday. But I know it means a lot to her. I think it was just their Happy New Year yesterday, actually, as well. And it's one where I try to measure it that way. Are our players engaged in the campus community? Are they engaged in the Denver community? We have one team rule, which is make good choices, right? Make good choices, and that really just encompasses everything. And that's kind of my metric. Now, have we been perfect? Absolutely not, but it gives me a chance. This is that last step before adulthood, and we recruit them on this idea that you're going to make mistakes. And I want to be there to help them like learn and grow through those mistakes, both on and off the court. Once we get on the court, I think the progress, again, when we weren't winning a ton, we won 12 games last year. I think 7 games our first year, 10 games my second year. And we still played a lot more games than that. And I remember we went on this long losing streak. It's maybe like 8 games. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, because, it's been so long at Tulane. We'd won quite a bit and we didn't experience these kind of like losing streaks. And so I had to force myself to kind of find a positive. And then, so I'd say we lost a game, but we really had our emphasis on taking care of the ball. We lost a game, but we really wanted to make sure that we limited their catch and shoot threes. And we really started to dive into film that way. so we can feel some type of progress. And that really gives us a chance too to let things change, right? You can say, oh, these are my goals, but I am the pivot queen. This might be what we want to do. But if COVID taught me anything, is how to pivot. Testing 3 times a week. I remember thinking, I honestly don't care what happens game day, as long as we get to play a game, as long as we get it, as long as we have a chance to play the game, because there's so much going on. But COVID, the benefit for me being a first-time head coach is I really learned how to pivot, and I'm still working at it, but I really try to challenge myself not to just judge our progress on the wins and loss of the game. Like, was there something else that we did well, that we can continue to focus on and try to highlight that, as well as still keeping that standard. Obviously, we want to see it work in our favor in terms of wins and losses, but the metrics change all the time. The team usually has an idea of what, we made progress and this is how. We didn't make progress and this is why. And, what can we do different for the next time?
So before we get to offense, I wanted to, first of all, I totally agree with you. I got my first head coaching job during COVID. I felt like I pivoted so much I was dizzy, right? Like, oh, we got to do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. All right, we're going to figure out this, right? You're just constantly figured out. But I wanted you to expand on, I like the simplicity of make good choices, right? Like, a lot of places they have all these things, like you said earlier, pages of lists of this and this and this. But so when you're talking to your team and recruits about make good choices, how do you go into a little bit more detail and kind of provide those examples and kind of teach them, because you have everybody from different backgrounds, like you said. So it's coming from a different perspective from each person you bring in. So how do you kind of get into the details of make good choices and kind of show them, hey, this is what good choices are, and this is kind of what we're looking for when we say make good choices?
Good. You mentioned John Gordon earlier. Fun fact about him, actually has a brother named Dave Gordon who wrote a book called Tip. And, kind of like the same, but anyway, the whole premise of the book was MGC, make good choices. And so I remember after reading the book, he actually did a life work for us. Dave Gordon did on building your brand and things like that. And I remember us talking and kind of how he came up with it was something that like him and his wife would say to their kids. And I said, I'm just going to take that because it really just encompasses everything. And it also gives you that ability to let them make those mistakes. How we talk about it, you're right. Everybody comes from different backgrounds. And we say all the time, you guys are all coming to us from different places. And part of college is learning how to work with other people, and not just obviously on the basketball court, but just in life too. And we're all raised different. We all got on this court a different path. And so we have to give ourselves a chance to learn that maybe someone's really not trying to be offensive, or they're really not trying to hurt your feelings. It's just how they were raised. And we talk anytime you come to practice, I might even go on a monologue about that. But then to also give examples of if it comes across my desk, now all of a sudden it's my business, right? We don't really try to get in their business outside of practice or things like that. But if it comes across, now it's our business. So whether that's something that you've done across campus, something that you've done in the community, which both has happened, somebody's going to email. And making good choices for us is also, as soon as you sign up to be a part of our program, it's no longer just about you. It's going to always say, Doshia Woods, Headliner's basketball coach at the University of Denver, did said thing, positive or negative. And so we're all going to get lumped in all the time. And so we just talk about that openly. We use other examples. If people are, if they fall short of what they want to do, we talk about, making good choices is essentially, you want everybody to kind of be a good person, but making good choices means doing your part and taking ownership in the decisions that you're making, right? If that's something in the classroom, not going to class and all of a sudden we get a follow-up. Well, here's the standard and expectations. Here's a rule, right? Make good choices, but our standard and expectations are you do X, Y, Z. And so outlined in our standard and expectations are kind of ways that, like, if you're unsure, how to make good choices. Here's what we're referring to. And then it's also a chance for us to learn that, you try to do what you can in the recruiting process, but until you get everybody on campus and you're spending that day in and day out with them, you really start to understand, okay, she was raised like this. And I don't think she really, not that she doesn't know, but we're going to have to take some time to explain why we need to pivot from this decision, or talk her through certain things, and then them educate us too. Our staff is always learning, and we're not one of those, it's not a dictatorship, just because I said so. I'm constantly asking for feedback, and if they have a better way, because they've probably seen it on YouTube or TikTok, okay, tell me why, and we can apply it or we can't apply it. So we try to spend some time talking about making good choices, because I know it's a big, just blanket umbrella. But every opportunity that I have to kind of use examples of, this was a great choice and this is where we could have made a better choice, we talk about it in hopes that those bad habits don't become, or those bad mistakes don't become habits.
So as we go into the second half of the show, we usually go on a specific topic with each of our guests. And as Todd and I kind of did our homework on you, something big in a lot of the Denver statistical write-ups was about offensive efficiency. So we wanted to focus on offensive efficiency with you. So our first piece of this is shot selection. I think every podcast I listened to in the last 5 months, at some point, has talked about shot selection. So for you, how do you define what shot selection looks like for your team? And let's just start with, I'll break this up into a couple parts. Do you look for a balance in twos, threes, free throws?
We want 30 threes a game, and we want 30 U shots a game. Free throws metric hasn't really, we hadn't really defined a metric for that, but that's, if you watch our team play, that's what we want. We want 30 shots in the U, we want 33s for sure. Shot selection is one that, Coach Lawrence Dubs, she is our motion offense coordinator. So she spends a ton of time in the film, just in terms of diving in what makes sense for us, been able to, now that we're headed into our fourth year, having players that we recruited, we've offered a lot more clarity. Once we start our 20 hours, actually not 20 hours, we're doing it next week, which is our last week of 8 hours in terms of shot selection, is we'll play a 5-minute game. We've been playing 5-minute games pretty much since we got back, because it's easier they like that better than just running lines to get in shape. Either way it goes, you got to get in shape. So we might as well try to just play our way in shape. So one game of 5 minutes usually turns into about 3, because they're competitive. It's like run it back. I'm like, okay, but we've got to teach too. But next week we'll do a shot selection game. And so the players received kind of this packet of some breakdown of our offensive terminology, what we're really trying to accomplish, why. And then we'll play the game based on, we'll probably narrow it down to 7 shots. And, basically the shot you take, the quality of the shot, you'll get points for that. That's how we'll play one game. So we want a uncontested layup, right? Say that's worth, that's number one shot that we want, right? It's easy shot. And so we'll play it both ways, either the golf ways where the lower score wins because of, 1 point for the best shot. Number 10 on that is like a contested off the dribble mid-range jumper, right? That's number 10 on our list. So it's not going to be a game that the highest score wins. We'll probably tweak it, because obviously whoever has the most points wins at the end of the game. So we'll probably adjust it that way. But the players will have kind of, this is a good shot, this is why. Also in that, we've done our, we sold this from my neighbors, our green light license. And so now we have 2 drills that they do that you need to pass both of those drills, either the green light, yellow light, and obviously if you don't do it at all, you have the red light. And we kind of talk about what that is. Now, because it's been preseason, we haven't really people have the green light, but eventually when we play our 5-minute games and get to our 10-minute games, let's say it's the 3 of us playing, right? And one of you guys, let's say Paul, has the green light, but as soon as I get the ball, I'm shooting, and it's, between that 20 and 30 seconds on the shot clock, boom, turnover. I have the red light, but Paul's open in the corner. I need to make the extra pass. Once we get in 20 hours, we'll have more time to talk through that. Again, we don't want them to play scared, but it's understanding you get what you work for in the offense. It's a 5-out motion. We don't run a ton of sets for this particular person. So obviously we have somebody that's going to get more shots, but a lot of it is, it starts to take care of itself. But the shot selection is one that we talk openly about, what type of shots we want. And then we'll give film too. Once we start at 20 hours, we'll have a chance to watch in real time, play a 5-minute game, watch why you could have made the extra pass, or why that was a good shot, or why we thought you could get a better shot.
So the second part of that is, are those ever kind of difficult conversations with players at all?
Yes, sir. Yes. I mean, because I literally just said this to them last week. One reason why I really enjoy coaching this way is, again, we're going back to our core values, that O is ownership. It forces them to take some ownership in what they want. Again, like I said, the offense is designed to get what you earn. We want to get out in transition. We want to be able to run. I talk a lot about getting in shape. We don't do conditioning drills. We just work on full court drills pretty much every practice. And so the conversations are tough because when I worked for people in the past that we ran a ton of sets, right? And we're just going to set a ton of sets for you because you're the best player on the team and all of that. Well, as an assistant, it was difficult for me to kind of keep the players excited to come to practice, right? Because every time you come to practice, I have to be like, keep working on your game, but knowing the game plan is for you to set 2 screens for set player. And the conversations get difficult because I think, sometimes the way that we play, sometimes it's like you're forced to really have a conversation with yourself then. Because when you look at practice, when you look at film, I'm not telling you what you can and can't do, right? Say you don't have a green light. So that means you're probably not shooting great, which means I'm probably asking you to make the extra pass. Okay, maybe you can separate yourself defensively, but now you don't have any rebounds. You don't necessarily have any stills. You don't talk. So it forces them to take some ownership. And I think there you really start to figure out who really wants to also invest in themselves. Not that we won't. We do, one of my assistants. And so Coach Miles is our recruiting coordinator. We talk often in the recruiting process about what type of players do we want on the front end, who can play for me. She wants to be a head coach at some point. I'm always telling her, okay, but it's me right now. So you have to think like me in a sense of, can she play for me? Can she play the style? Coach Dent, our other assistant, she's taken over daily deposits, which is basically our segment for skill work. And they're really specific, 2 to 3 kids per group. And then a lot of the skill is based on our offense, right? Getting to the world, transition threes, finishes out the basket, playing off 2 feet, those things like that. So again, the whole program is designed for you to take ownership. And as things start to evolve, some do and some don't. And so now we have all of these, when we do daily deposits, we stat that. We try to stat as many practices as we can. So I usually, what I see, film to validate it and stats to validate it. So it makes those conversations easier. I don't want them to feel like, oh, she's just not playing because she doesn't like me. Well, no, I'm playing the group that I think is going to help us win. And here's how I got to that.
So I want to follow on that a little bit. Obviously, depending on different situations, like you just rattle off your assistants and recruiting coordinators, and you probably have GAs and managers, but
we don't. We have 5 of us. We have an ops.
Okay.
So it's literally 5 of us.
But just I want to kind of boil it down to kind of think of, like, say, just a normal high school program that maybe has varsity assistant, varsity head coach, and some lower level coaches that are kind of doing multiple things. If you were going to boil it down for those coaches, talking about the stuff you just talked about, the shot tracking and the daily deposits, what would be kind of your nuts and bolts if you could only do like the basics, right? And not necessarily you maybe had the resources to have all those people to kind of to stat and all that, throughout the practice.
Good question. I think for a high school, or if you don't have all the resources, is trying to figure out part of our daily deposits prior to us getting to this point is just putting up on the board. This is what we want you to do, right? We want you to shoot these shots from the 3, these shots in transition, whatever it is. And then here's what we want you to make. You have to make 7 out of 10 or whatever. And then that's how it kind of was early on, where they just had to track it. Well, the game knows if you're lying, right? I don't spend, the game knows. So if we say, do these 3 drills, you need to shoot 70%, and you said, oh, I had a great day, I shot 80%. But now when we get live, you keep shooting 30% or 20%. Somebody's lying. Either you are lying or the numbers are lying. And so doing a lot of that of like the game knows where, they have the metric. I think the other part too, if we didn't have the staff that we had, is tracking it the next day. So starting practice the next day after you've had a chance to pick these 2 drills out. Everybody knows we're tracking these 2 drills in practice. And so then the next day, once you get there, having a chance to talk about, okay, we met our metric. Here's why. Let's continue that, or we didn't meet our metric. And I don't know high school or another level if there's like managers or kids that just really like sports or want to kind of get into it, is almost giving them something to chart in practice as well. Hey, can you chart every time we, get a shot in the paint, and having that metric as well. So it might be that the next day can't be real time, like the resources we have, but that next day, that's how you can kind of start practice with some of these, it can't be every drill when you don't have a ton of people, because you're going to wear yourself out. It's like, I had actually texted Mike Neighbors about our green light license, because it's a program that we stole from him. And he starts talking about all these people that he's like, they chart this and video this. And I'm like, okay, we don't have all of that here at the university. We don't have GAs or director. I mean, we see all the positions now, and there's 5 of us, and we have a manager and a practice guy. And, we're trying to get more of that. So that we've had to pivot and adjust. So I understand somebody at a small level or high school level, there's a way to do it. You just need to do it in a way that makes sense. And that also doesn't wear you out either, right? Because it can get tedious, but that's why picking something that's important and trying to be consistent with that, instead of saying the whole practice or the whole thing that we're going to chart and give feedback.
Todd and I are smiling before he does his question for our listeners, because our listeners know we love Mike Neighbors, and he was phenomenal. That's why we're smiling.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, Coach Dubs is in charge of, like I said, our motion offense. And so she was listening to another podcast, and she's like, do you think we can text? I know one of his other assistants well. And she was like, do you think you can text Pauline and ask her about the green light license? I have a couple questions. And so I ended up just texting him. And when I tell you, he texted me back like a list of things, like shooting drills, and it was like no hesitation. And obviously Arkansas and University of Denver aren't the same things, but I've always appreciated just how giving of his knowledge he is. And, at the end of the day, our players have to perform and they have to make shots and all of those things. So he's not one that like, I'm going to keep this for me. He's like, okay, here, what else do you need? What else you need? And so no, he's the one that if you are one that wants to learn and have a growth mindset, he's definitely one to kind of gravitate towards, because he's just going to put it all out there. There's no guessing what his program is doing either.
That's right. So we will go from there. So let's kind of talk about turnovers. All coaches want to limit turnovers. Kind of how do you do that with your team to make you more efficient, to get those 30 and 30? And, for you, are all turnovers kind of the same? Are there more aggressive turnovers versus maybe a passive turnover?
Yeah, well, we really don't want any live ball turnovers, because that's hard to get back on. And I always tell the team, we can't rebound a turnover. We can rebound a missed shot. So we want to play fast. We want to get shots up early in a shot clock from the right people. But I'd rather us have a quick 3 in transition and then sit there and try to like penetrate and do something off the dribble that you have to force. We always say if your counter needs a counter, then somebody else is probably open. But we really try to limit our live ball turnovers. And honestly, we want to get a shot up before we get to that point. I remember listening to Gino talk one time. He was like, nothing great happens really after 3 dribbles. And then that's kind of how we'll use that. A lot of our breakdown, we'll say, okay, offense has 3 dribbles. Because if you can't get there, if you start to get 5, 6, 7, we're probably going to get a turnover. Or sometimes it might just be the turnover in practice. And won't give you a chance, because I feel like you're trying to be selfish and create for yourself as opposed to creating something else for the team. So we want to try to track live ball turnovers. That's an area that we really want to be able to get down. And I think clarifying our offense as we did this summer, hopefully will help with that, of being able to kind of attack the paint more and not just kick it up for the sake of kicking it up. A lot of times people are like, oh, let me get the ball in transition and just kick it up to somebody's open. No, they're running down to get to their spot for a reason. We don't necessarily want, and if you're we call our point guards the rackers. If you're the racker, we want the ball in your hand for a reason. You're typically one of our better decision makers. So live ball turnovers we want to try to avoid. And then, if I have my way, we can just shoot it before we turn it over, to be honest with you, because at least we have a chance to try to rebound it.
Yeah, there's definitely the you rather get the shot up at least, even if you miss it, rather than turn it over. I've really started to dig into that. So let's kind of talk about creating the shots and how you guys on your team want to create shots. What you're looking to do in transition to create shots, maybe in the half court on your baseline out of bounds plays. More like maybe your concepts or your actions or things in your motion that you're really trying to use to create your shots.
Yes, first of all, we want to get out and run. I say this almost on every podcast that I do. There's no sense of being at this altitude, 5280, and us walking the ball up the court. Like it's like a counterproductive to me if we're going to walk the ball up the court, been at this altitude. So first thing we want to do is get out and run. The second is, you have more opportunities once you get the ball to the middle of the paint, right? You can see the court, better. So that's the first thing. We get out and run, get something easy in transition. The point guard gets it. They can kind of get to the middle of the floor. Now you have options, right? You got shooters, pretty much everybody ideally on the floor can shoot for us. So it creates matchup problems. We have a few bigger guards this year that I'll have a chance when it's time to run some sets and to isolate, and our motion offense is probably 85% of what we do. Now, if we're making poor decisions, right, and we've gotten a few turnovers in a row or a few bad shots or the wrong people shooting the shots, we'll run a couple sets, a couple quick hitters. And honestly, some of them prepping for that game that week, right? We'll kind of look at what they do and how we can kind of create some advantages, but it's not like the sets aren't for us to remember, and I'll tell the team, this is for this game, right? This is for this game. This is why. And then you don't have to remember it. I want us to be able to play simple and to play free. And the same once we get our out of bounds plays, it's 5-on-4, So again, I don't want our players overthinking. And so honestly, out of bounds wise, I'm simple. Just give me a box set and get it in. We'll probably get into something then, but I'm not one that we have all of these, like Bill Self has some great out of bounds plays. We don't have anybody that can dunk. He does a lot of kind of good misdirection. Now, if we need it, right, if it's low in the shot clock, I have a package of in women's basketball, you can advance the ball under a minute in the fourth quarter. So I have a package of that for our players. And one thing I ask our players pretty much every summer is, we're down 5, we've advanced the ball. We need we need a shot to win it, either 2 or 3, where you want the ball. And so I keep a list of that. So I know kind of the, 2 or 3 players that can be in that situation, foul trouble, being healthy, all those things, that already know what I want to design for her. If we need something at the rim, if we need a 3, something like that. So, and then we'll practice. The other thing that we do in practice is, say we get a water break and come out and all of a sudden we're going to play a 2-minute situation. Or we'll say this is a situation and play it out. Or when practice is over, we'll do an overtime situation. And I'll just blow my whistle, overtime, and they're waiting. Is it a 5-minute overtime? Is it just a drill? Or what is it, baseline? Is it sideline? But that's how we have. I don't like to spend a ton of time. If they have to think about it, I work for somebody that both sides of the ball, we had a lot offensively and a lot defensively. And I struggled as an assistant to remember that. So I'm like, I know if I'm struggling, you're struggling. So our players will tell you, we try to keep it simple. Now our cuts, once you dive into our offense, they're numbered, they're cut numbered wise, and you're forced to communicate. But a lot of what we do is, ideally, my perfect world, all 5 people on the floor are offensive threat, and it's your job as the opponent to figure out how you're going to slow us down, because we're going to keep playing how we want to play. We're not just going to pound the ball inside. And I do want to address that one, because people sometimes we have 2 kids committed to us right now that are, both 6'3" kids. And everyone's like, oh, if you're a post player, it's not the system for you. You just have to be mobile. If you are a big body back to the basket, because often at our level, we're not getting a ton of bigs. Those are like reserved now for the Power Five schools to kind of go develop. And so we have to be able to think outside the box and get creative. And that's how the 5-out became a thing. I have a degree in English, but 3 is worth more than 2s every day of the week. So especially in a game when you're playing basketball, whoever has the most points wins. So I don't want to overcoach. I don't want to, manage every single aspect of the game. I want our players to have some freedom. And we talk a lot about concepts and trust that when it's game day, it's their time to shine. Practice is for me. Game is for you guys.
She has no idea how happy she just made me, Todd, with what she just said. Because Coach, we think the same. So we're going to be talking off.
Okay, good. Good.
You're preaching to the choir too with those 6-footers, because we're happy if we can get one that we can get on their tippy toes that we can stretch them out, right? Like, hey, stand up tall today. It might be 6 foot. So before I get to kind of the analytics, this is something I've always been interested in and kind of dabbled in. You said your numbered cuts, right? So kind of maybe just go through kind of what that looks like. Are you stacking numbers to get certain actions? Obviously game dependent, right, of what you're looking to do and take advantage of defenses and things like that. But maybe a little bit more detail on your numbered cuts and kind of how that works.
Yeah, you can either stack the numbers. They can be single numbers. You can put them together. We're going to go 13. We're going to go 31. We're just going to go all ones. Obviously, each number is a different cut. And then, one area that we're going to try to be better at as a staff this year is trying to figure out who your weakest defender is, right? Who your weakest defender is, and then maybe trying to get her involved in some action. The first year we got the position here, it really has more from like a Florida Gulf Coast. Carlton Mesco does a great job of a lot of like misdirection. So it's like a little bit of Florida Gulf Coast, Arkansas, Villanova, Creighton, Northern Iowa, like 5 programs off the top of my head that play like a 5-out motion. But the cuts are numbered, and it really is just once we go into a game, depending on how they play, right? Is it a team that's playing a pack line defense where they're going to sag off a little bit? We're going to have to change the angles, maybe of our cuts or some of our screens. Is it one that wants to get out and deny? And how we're going to approach this. So a lot of our cuts have numbers, whether it's going to be a basket cut, a fade, a slip, things like that. And then once we figure out the opponent that we're playing, we will adjust the cuts for that. If somebody plays a zone, we're just going to honestly do the same thing. I don't want to cloud their mind. You got your basic kind of like zone offense, or like this is front of X with like a high-low action. But yeah, we're going to stack our cuts. And again, it depends on if we want to try to, I say we don't have, like, we're not running stats for anybody, but trust me, I'm not incompetent, right? Todd, if you get the hot hand, right, and you're on fire, we're about to call some cuts for you.
Feed the rock, right?
It's not, and that's one thing, again, because we have so many returners this year, we can talk openly to our team about is, as much as it's a 5-out, it really is not equal opportunity, because some people just have a better skill set, or people are better one-on-one. So there are those moments for that. And so the cuts will depend on who's hot, who's not. We do have one post player who was last year Summit League Defensive Player of the Year, and she's probably like our back to the basket, if you will. So if there's a game that we really need to establish that so we can open up the 3 more, we might start out in some kind of ISOs for her. But the flexibility of the 5-out and the number system that we've learned, we just implemented a number system this summer. It's been easier for clarity for our players, but it's also easier now for me as a coach just to say, I want 34 this way, 34. It's almost like a baseball, softball scenario, right? Where you got all of these like numbers coming in, but our team understands it, and it's been effective against each other. I can't wait for our scrimmages to see how we look against someone else.
So perfect lead in now, talking about measuring this, right? Getting your hot player the ball. Maybe when you're coming in at halftime or after a game, or, after, early in the season, after a certain amount of games, kind of what metrics and kind of analytics are you using to evaluate your efficiency on offense and your individual players. I know you talked about the green light, right? That's the kind of the shooting aspect of it. And then kind of what are your goals with your team, as you're going throughout the year?
So we want to be, I'm one that likes somebody that can fill up a stat sheet. So, we'll talk obviously your shooting percentage, right? If what type of shots did you take? And if those two don't match up, say all of a sudden now I'm going to pick on you, Jon. Say Jon isn't like the best, the shooter, right? He doesn't have his green light license, but all of a sudden in this game he's, 2 for 7. But Todd has the green light and now he's 1 for 3. Well, how can we get you more shots, right? So that's one metric just in terms of like looking at the shooting percentage. Rebounding, I would tell a team, is often the separator, right? Are you rebounding yourself? And then offensively, though, the turnover margin. Like if you don't have a green light and you're shooting, 2 for 7, 2 for 8, but now you also have 4 turnovers, you're adding those together. That's 12 opportunities that you're touching the ball when somebody else. So that's how we're going to probably break it down this year, in terms of trying to add that the turnover component in there in terms of taking care of the ball. Me and Coach Miles work a lot defensively, so we'll also try to add some defensive metrics in there. And then one area, just I talk about our number cuts, but we talk a lot about your exit cuts. So when we go to break down film, things that don't show up on a stat sheet. Did you how are your exit cuts? How are your screens? Because also we can't say, oh, it doesn't matter who scores. Only people, like, all these parts are important. We need to have a way to measure that. So when we go to watch film as a team or as an individual, we'll say, hey, your exit cuts weren't great. This is why you didn't get your feet set, or this is why this person didn't get open. We need you to hold this screen a little bit more. Given those type of feedbacks offensively. So there's not necessarily a way that we're measuring. From when we start our 20 hours, we'll do like a positive negative chart of offensive and defensive base, so they can kind of get the idea of what we're looking for as coaches, right? How important getting to your spot is in 7 seconds, how important it is to be shot ready, looking at the rim. It's kind of detailed like that. That we're tweaking for this group, but we'll start that for probably the first three or 4 weeks of our 20 hours for them to understand everything that we're looking at. So it's not like, again, if you're our leading scorer and you shoot bad 2 for 10, but you've helped us in all this other areas, so I left you on the floor. It's important that the team know that. It's not just like, well, I mean, she was 2 for 10 and you still got to play. Well, yeah, she was 2 for 10, but then she had 6 assists and 2 turnovers, 7 rebounds. And next question, please.
Coach Jon, I'm gonna go play for Coach because she just gave me the green light. So we're flying out. I don't know what you're gonna do. You didn't get the green light, but I'm going.
Hey, listen, I don't even have the green light, and I was 2 for 7. So I'm
right. Like I didn't even show up.
Okay, so let's kind of transition into our last 2 segments. The first one we call 30-second timeout. It's your chance to kind of talk about whatever you want, yourself, your family, your program, something you want our listeners to know about. You turn the tables on Todd and I and ask us a question, whatever you kind of want to talk about. As we say, it's a rough 30 seconds. There's no official in your timeout telling you your 30 seconds is up.
Perfect. Well, I definitely want to take some time to just talk about the growth of our program. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you can get so consumed in the wins and losses, right? That, we won 7, 10, 12 games. But I think one area, especially going into year 4, that I'm so excited about and proud of is just the progress that we have made. I haven't really given myself enough credit for how difficult COVID was in terms of just trying to learn and build something. And I think to anyone that wants to be a head coach is you really have to figure out who you want to be as a leader, who you want to be and what you want to build. And I think early on, I wasn't guessing, so to speak. It was just all of these thoughts that you have, and then the team that you inherit. Sometimes those things don't necessarily have a chance to match up. So I am one to constantly telling our players to show yourself some grace, but then coaches as well, show yourself some grace. There's so many nuances, and success can be defined so many different ways. figure out what looks like success for you and how you can define that for you. And then also surround yourself with people that want the best for the program and the best for what you're building in mind. It might be you individually, but really the best, the bigger picture. And I think being in a place that's supportive, like the administration that I've had, I'm really excited about, the steps that we're taking to elevate this program. And this year, I'm hoping that the numbers reflect that, but I know we'll continue to make progress.
All right, Coach. I like to say this is where the episode goes off the rails. This is mostly nothing about basketball, maybe a couple, but call it quick hitters, just kind of random questions, just to get to know you a little bit, have some fun. First one, most unique thing about. Now we gotta get specific. East Topeka, Kansas, not just Topeka. Most unique thing.
Okay, I'll do both. East Topeka. I'm going to say most unique thing is my favorite hamburger spot. Harold's Prize Package, because I still don't know how they get the cheese inside the cheeseburger. It's still my favorite one.
One of the big questions, right?
Yes, but Topeka in general, fun fact, Dean Smith and I went to the same high school. Obviously, he was there a long time before me. And then our first ever head coach of the senior national team for our Olympic team in women's basketball, Billy Moore, is also from Topeka, Kansas. So awesome. It's literally in my blood, but yes, those two I wanted to give a shout out. Both have passed away, but yes.
Okay, so I love New Orleans. I've been there multiple times. So favorite Cajun food from your time at Tulane?
Crawfish. Like I literally could go on a crawfish diet, and it is, crawfish, and then gumbo is probably second, but when it's crawfish season, I don't care. Like boiled crawfish, hands down favorite, to the point where we had to buy the pot here and have them shipped from New Orleans, and we started like making them ourselves. But yes, boiled crawfish.
All right. This is one of the few basketball ones. A newer offensive concept that you're studying or interested in.
To continue, honestly, to dive into this 5-out motion, I also learned about Tyler Costin's savvy coaching, and both offensively and defensively. So I studied that this summer to try to steal some things, both sides of the ball. And I'm excited to see how they look this season. So give savvy coaching and his kind of app a whole shout out.
No, it's really good stuff.
Yeah, we have had Tyler on. He was excellent.
Oh, nice. Look at that.
All right, back to non-basketball. Your favorite food, fast food guilty pleasure?
Okay, if usually cheeseburgers, but Panda Express Kung Pao chicken with like 2 spring rolls. Yes, that is like, yes. So cheeseburger, that's like a given, but like Panda Express Kung Pao chicken, yes. I shouldn't have it every day, but I could.
Right. All right. Your favorite outfit to coach in. I don't know if it's going to be a trend in Colorado. Maybe you got to show up with your shades and your cowboy hat. I don't know what's happening. I mean, if the trend continues, but what's your favorite outfit to coach in?
It's funny. Real quick, somebody said, if you coach, like if you were like Coach Prime, then I like come to your games. Like, I am not Coach Prime.
Right. Nobody has that swag.
Nobody, right? Like I'm not Coach Prime. I'm not trying to be Coach Prime. I'm a Coach Prime fan. Had us up all night watching the game, but no, I am Doshia Woods, and I'm just going to be me. But I really respect what he's done. I am a quarter zip and just jogger type person. No one really dressed up in COVID, and again, being the first time head coach, I was like, oh, this is nice, because I'm super passionate on the sideline. So you can catch me in a quarter zip.
Yeah.
And probably some Lulus.
That was one of the best things about COVID. I think the gear change. We can get a little bit more comfortable instead of wearing, I'm sort of finding that shirt and tie I got to wear and the pants and
at least this shirt and ties for you guys. We got to find a whole.
Right.
That's how I started wearing my last 3 years at Tulane. I started wearing dresses every game because I got tired of trying to find something to match like tops. So just give me a dress. It's all one piece. Just put it on. But no, you can catch me in some quarter zip, New Balance, and Lulus.
Love it.
Yes.
So we kind of talked to Coach Curry from Alabama about this, but you are another unique person in the profession in that you coach with your wife. So we wanted to know maybe something that's unique or special, or your favorite part about getting to coach with your wife, getting that opportunity.
Yes. Well, we've been together for about 15 years. We've been married for about 12 plus years. So our entire marriage, we've actually worked together. She was an ops at Tulane. I was a recruiting coordinator. And then when I got the position here, one thing that we both love about the game, we're so passionate about the game. And I think sometimes our passion shows up in different ways, for sure. But I love just how passionate and invested, she, like, again, she does our motion offense and will take it, and she's the analytical one on staff, and we have a good balance because sometimes at the end of the day, I'm just like, okay, that's a lot of numbers, like, just simplify it for me. But yeah, we have a good balance that way. And again, I'm typically defensive minded, but our passion and our passion for the game, to be able to have the opportunity to do this together, to always talk about basketball. Like we've done better this past year, trying to like have a balance, but I really enjoy it. And I think sometimes people, just assume like, oh, and I'm sure Coach Curry probably has this too, and it's there. It's, Tennessee up at Colorado is the same thing. It's a husband and wife team there, but making this assumption that, oh, it's just because she's like the coach's wife. And like, no, she has 20 plus years of experience and she's been in the profession. It wasn't like I hired her because she was, just because she's my wife and she was a banker. Like, she is a basketball mind. She's a basketball junkie. And that's what brought us together. And it's not that whole like cliche of loving basketball. We're just both passionate about the game and passionate about mentoring, and to be able to do it together at a place that supports us doing that. I feel super fortunate, and a lot of gratitude to the University of Denver to allow us to live our dreams together.
Tell you what, if I could get my wife to coach with me, I'd probably be a lot better coach.
She was a Hall of Fame player, so I don't disagree with you.
She was.
Yeah. Well, Coach, we massively enjoyed this episode. We probably went much longer than
sorry about that.
No, this was Todd and I going much longer. So thank you. This is going to be one of those episodes that people learn in abundance from. So thank you for jumping on with us today.
I really appreciate the opportunity to just not only talk about my journey, our program, but definitely where we're headed as well. So thank you. Thank you both for reaching out, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in concert with the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association. Please remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you may listen. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout and subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.